You are now listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
Groovy. No more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God, get away.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joined today will be Sean.
Hello.
And that'll be it for this episode because Derek is not able to join us as he was overcome by the heat and goblins and some vampires and mummies and stuff. or just wasn't feeling well because he has to work in the heat. And it was quite hot today.
Yeah, it was very muggy in Louisville. It was oppressively hot. So I can imagine him getting sick from that, working all day in it, because I was outside in the garage just a little bit, and I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm not spinning. It was after the rain too, because it rained, and that made it really bad today.
Yeah, my car had some issues, so I had to take the bus to work today, and the bus ride home was not very fun. It was, it was a bit hot. At least there wasn't anybody. I don't know what anybody's experiences are in the different areas they live with, public transportation. But in Louisville, Kentucky, there really is just the bus system, and I get to ride it for free because my employer does that. But it seems and a lot of employers locally do that. In other not other countries. Well, I guess in other countries too, but other cities, you have in addition to buses, you have subways or rail that's above ground, stuff like that. And I always enjoy using those transportation systems when I'm visiting those cities. I don't have to use them every day though, so it's not.
Yeah.
But on the bus system here, it's the TARC system, the Transit Authority of the River City. And it seems in the afternoon, my current bus route mostly has a bunch of people that get on with smoldering cigarettes that they put above their ear. And then you have 3 or 4 people that dot the areas around you with that, and people that have not great body odor in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it's not a great experience, but it's free.
Yeah.
But I have my car back now, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and two, when you're on vacation, you're not worried about going to work or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just oh, I'm just gonna go here, and time isn't as important to you then. So I would love to live in a city though with a subway system. Yeah,
I don't think we'll get one here in anytime soon, but
no.
Go up to Cincinnati and use their streetcar. That's pretty close. But on this episode, we'll be discussing a number of movies. So we'll discuss Young Frankenstein, the movie from Mel Brooks starring Gene Wilder. And it's kind of funny looking at the cast list. It also has Peter Boyle in it, which I didn't think about when I watched this early when I was younger. And then it also has Gene Hackman in it in a role. So a movie.
Horace Leachman.
Yeah, so it's full of people. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be discussing It Comes at Night, the new kind of widely critically acclaimed indie horror film that's been getting a lot of buzz and a little bit of audience blowback from what I've seen. But we'll be discussing that. And then before that, I know also, Sean, you also saw the new Mummy film with Tom Cruise. So you'll have some thoughts on that.
Sure did see that.
So, so before we get into all that, we'll go through some recent news and things we've been watching. And on recent news, the box office numbers just kind of relate to The Mummy are in for the weekend. And I know you talked before about Universal trying to do the dark universe with all these different interconnected movies where you'll have monsters fighting each other or Tom Cruise punching stuff. And it debuted to $31,688,375 in the U.S., which is not great. The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser Mummy from, I believe it was 1999 or something, debuted to $40 million, and that was 18 years ago. So it's not off to a great start in the U.S. Worldwide, it has done a little bit better. Worldwide, it grossed $141 million. Which I think is a foreign worldwide opening record for a Tom Cruise film.
Yeah, that's right.
But the U.S. numbers were not good. And so if the movie ends up being profitable overall, it's going to be completely saved by the international box office, like a bunch of other movies that have come out in recent years, like Warcraft
and Pacific Rim. Isn't that getting a sequel basically because of the international numbers? I feel like I remember that being
Yeah.
kind of teetering on the edge, and that did pretty well internationally. And now
Yeah.
they're making that sequel.
Because it made around like 100 million domestic, and I think ended up making like around 400 million worldwide, with a lot of
Yeah.
that being China.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Mummy from what year was that?
99 maybe?
From May. It released on May 7th, 1999, and it made $155 million domestic and $260 million worldwide, and that was in '99 when the worldwide grosses weren't what they are today. So if the new Mummy can outperform the one from '99, that's yet to be seen. But it is interesting to compare these franchises that, you know,
Much less competition then too.
yeah, there's much less
know.
competition because you didn't have a new box office busting movie every weekend from May through September, or, you know, May through August. And you know, now it even extends further in the year into like March and February have big movies. But yeah, so that's something worth keeping an eye on to see how that plays out. And then,
I mean, I thought I had heard recently, or I had read somewhere, I don't know if you did or I've had a conversation with you about it, that like Universal was like really itching and really like almost upset, or they really wanted to have their own like Marvel universe. I'm sure it's for a profit perspective, but it seems like they're really trying to push this just because of that big promotional push that came out when they announced it as being the Dark Universe.
yeah,
And they had that photo shoot with everybody that's supposedly cast. And then it's like, man, like not even Marvel, which I mean, I guess it was the beginning of it. Like Marvel, that first Iron Man movie came out. Imagine if they would have had like a big thing with like 5 different actors from 5 different movies, doing a big thing saying, hey, this is going to be like this huge thing we're going to do. And you could actually have seen that being, I guess you could envision that more just based on those properties. But like the Universal Monsters thing, like it's such an old property, and I think it's very weird. It's a very hard thing, I think, to kind of bring that into modern audiences because the characters are so iconic, but they're also, they're very much like they've been taken and put into so many different things and cereal boxes and just, you know what I mean? Like they're just part of our pop culture, but to a point to where just seeing them on screen or knowing there's going to be a movie about them doesn't do a lot for most people, I don't think, anymore, when you've got all these other things coming out.
well, and two, there was a interview that John Landis did recently, and he made a couple of good points. One is that, the interconnected Universal monster films, it's not a new idea. It happened back in the 40s. And they had those different movies of like Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and then they eventually had Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, which was kind of the end of the road on that. And then he also said, as soon as you announce that Tom Cruise is in The Mummy, it's not going to be a horror picture. So both true points. And, there's a lot of people that are kind of cool on the idea. And like I'm on the board with like the lower budgeted movies showing up in that universe, like being a cool idea. But do we really need to see another multi-billion-dollar franchise where Johnny Depp's in there? And like, what if the twist is that he's supposed to be the Invisible Man? He's in the background of all the movies, watching them as they unfold, and then his movie is just literally flashbacks to him watching the other movies happen, and then he's just like, I'm invisible, and then
that would be at least somewhat creative, but the problem is if he was in The Mummy, he was in the background of a horrible movie, so that doesn't help right now. It doesn't help with him starting out. But I think the thing they need to do with these films is, I don't know, I almost feel like they need to tackle it with a different tone, just because I don't know what tone to do with it, to direction to take these. But like, if you're going to go serious, I almost feel like you need to be also self-aware at a certain level. I feel like when I was watching The Mummy, I was thinking, man, I would like to see Guillermo del Toro tackle a Universal monster movie, because like something like Crimson Peak, where it takes I guess that genre of the gothic horror very seriously, but also you feel like he's aware of it. You know what I mean? But it's not winking or anything, but it very much like respects that genre. But he also, I don't know, I feel like he plays with it in interesting ways. He makes it feel fresh and obviously like throws tons of visual flair at it. Like I would have loved to have seen him do The Mummy, you know, his version of him scripting it and everything like that. Like I think he could have brought something to it. But, you know, there was a lot of writers on this version of The Mummy, and it shows. Like it feels like they were just throwing the script to everybody, trying to get input and figuring out actually just how to do it. And they did not figure out how to do it. And I think it's probably gonna take somebody special to work on each of these films to really get something great out of them. And it seems like they're in too much of a rush really at this point already. They're putting the cart before the horse, and I don't see this ending well for the rest of these films. I'm not saying they might not be good. Like I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was fantastic, but you know, I don't see this franchise being stellar.
Well, and two, you have, I think the next one is The Bride of Frankenstein is the one they're working on. It's going to have Bill Condon directing, who had just recently directed Beauty and the Beast and some other movies. So a director that has his name on stuff that made a lot of money, but not necessarily horror stuff, because Bride of Frankenstein is listed as being in pre-production for a 2019 release. So what to see? And then he also directed some of the Twilight films. So
yeah, and they don't want to go too hard on the horror because they're trying to get the broadest audience as possible.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They're trying to make money on this. So
if you make $150 million R-rated horror film, you're not going to have a very big audience to recoup that money, especially seeing like how Alien Covenant's done at the box office so far, where it is currently at $181 million worldwide for the gross off a budget of $97 million. And I think it still has some big markets to open up in, but we'll have to see what the ultimate grossing is. But I think they see that putting an R rating is a huge risk on a movie that anything gets to be over like $50 million or something.
And honestly, I don't blame them. Like, you know, for these movies, these are the universal, you know, these films weren't super graphic or anything like that. Like, I think of any horror franchise, it would be fine to tackle these with PG-13, but just kind of know what you're trying to do with it. Not just like, hey, we need to hit a PG-13 rating. This is going to be Tom Cruise film, and you know what I mean? And it's going to be the first one of this dark universe because we're going to try to build this connective universe. Like, it feels like all those other things came before making an awesome version of The Mummy.
Yeah, they were just more concerned with getting a franchise off the ground than actually taking time to build.
And like I said, I saw the film. I'm not just talking about ass, but like I would have, if somebody would ask me, I would have made those predictions before seeing the film. But it is, it was just, for me, that film was a disaster. I can go into it more in a little bit though once we get through any more news we have.
Yeah, so some other brief news. The new Goosebumps movie is coming on September 21st, 2018, and it'll have Jack Black back as R.L. Stein. So that was a movie that when it came out, you know, I think it was G or PG rated. It wasn't even PG-13, I think. And, you know, we enjoyed it and thought it was, you know, like, I know a lot of people who like the Goosebumps books felt like a little bit left out because it wasn't a adaptation of any of the real stories. It was just Jack Black as R.L. Stein, where like stuff from the books he wrote became real. So it's kind of like a nostalgia thing.
Yeah, it was definitely huge on nostalgia for me. But it was a good film too. That wasn't all it had to offer, I don't think.
So there'll be more Goosebumps in the upcoming future. It's
Goosebumps Horrorland.
Yeah,
so
which is,
you know, I guess the amusement park. One of my favorite games when I was younger, PC games, was Goosebumps Escape from Horrorland, and I actually just found that cleaning up my parents' house since they'd moved recently.
Yeah,
but that game was awesome. It was like a FMV point and click adventure game, you know.
Yeah.
So you were going through the park and would have to like solve certain things to get to the next section of the park, and like avoid like some beast coming after you and all this stuff, and different monsters would like pop up from the books. But I played that game over and over and over with my friends. I may try to bring that back out. Maybe I'll record some video for the site for it before this movie comes out.
Yeah, and yeah, so have to wait and see when more stuff on the Goosebumps. Like, because I read all the books when I was younger. Just I haven't read any of them since then. I watched the TV show that was on Nickelodeon or Fox. No, it was on. I think it was on Fox.
Yeah, it was Fox.
And I remember those because I remember like the debut one was like the haunted mask. Well, hopefully that's something that'll be seen in these sequels because that was kind of an iconic mask at least.
Yeah,
and
yeah, I'm same here. Like I love those books. I was, would read them all, wait for the new ones to come out and stuff. And like Horrorland, like I'm pretty excited this is Horrorland just based on like my memories of that game because that was something. It wasn't just like a book where I read it a couple of times. It was like I played the crap out of that. And I think setting it in an amusement park has there's a lot they can do with that. I think just because the other one was kind of broad in that it kind of felt like it touched all the different things in the universe. Yeah. So I wonder if now they're going to kind of like zero in and maybe pick a different type of story to tell, which it seems like it. Like I don't want everything escaping from the book again. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for this because that other one like turned out really well. Like I only watched it once. I saw it in theaters, but I really enjoyed the time I had watching it. Like it was a good PG horror film.
Yeah, and then there's also the scary stories to tell in the dark that's in production or in development that has been sent out there too. So like these kind of things from like everybody's childhood coming back is an interesting trend because everything's being done based on nostalgia now.
So that's not the documentary, is it? Is that an actual film they're making on it?
Well, I thought that wasn't it the one where Guillermo del Toro was attached, like producing.
Oh wow. I can't even remember now.
Because I seem to remember that.
Look that up. You're probably right. I just totally kind of forgot. Yeah, it says Del Toro's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark adaptation is finally moving forward again. This was February, unless something's changed since then.
Yeah, I mean, he's been attached to so many things. It's usually tough to see when they actually come out. But yeah, so like just those books and different things from like, I'm surprised something like Erie, Indiana has been relaunched for the modern era, but yeah. So then I think that was kind of all the recent news from the past week. I know there was some stuff people talked to, like I think David Lindelof about like where the Alien or the Prometheus sequel would have went compared to where Covenant went, and all the stuff he said sounded, at least to me, more interesting than what Covenant did about like the
yeah. And from what I remember, he was almost saying too, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't like where they went in Covenant wasn't what we discussed, kind of where things ending up as far as the engineer's home or whatever. So he said something along the lines of like, I wouldn't be surprised if the next film, if they did it, that we would actually maybe see that place. So
yeah,
it's like, this is a pit stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it makes it feel more like a throwaway movie almost, aside from David's little story.
Yeah, because it sounded like the planet they went to wasn't the engineer home planet, just like kind of a check-in station or like a outpost or something. Because the world itself seemed pretty uninhabited, aside from like the one area where there's all, without spoiling numbers, it seemed like the most of the planet wasn't fully populated.
Yeah, which, thinking about it makes sense. Like if it was their home planet and they were that advanced, you would have thought they would have kind of spread things out, and the technology there seemed very limited. You know what I mean? Like they seemed like they were living in ruins. And
there's also like a ship that had been stranded on that planet for how long that it just showed up, and
yeah. So that kind of makes sense, and they didn't explain it, which is fine. Like it's good that they didn't over-explain that stuff, but so who knows? Also, too, little bit of horror game news. Evil Within 2 comes out Friday the 13th. This October. And then they also just announced what was that game? Oh man, now I can't think of it. I played it for the site. Oh gosh, the PS4 game. The point and click adventure. Supermassive Games made it. Let me see here. Let me just type in. I'm drawing a blank because I know who made it. Until Dawn. So which is kind of like an adventure game, horror adventure game. They are making a VR version that kind of looks like maybe the same gameplay, but it's not Until Dawn. It's like set in an asylum or something like that. So I'm sure that will be pretty awesome in VR, but I don't remember when that was coming out.
Yep. And
Adam West.
Yeah, Adam West passed away, unfortunately, over the weekend, because it's all. When I first saw that, I was like, oh man, because he's somebody that has stayed around in the public eye and seems to be like, when he was in different things, seemed to be generally like at peace with what his place in the pop culture pantheon was. And, because of course he was from the, original Batman series from the 60s, Batman and Robin, and then had been in a bunch of stuff after that. And he was the first on-screen movie Batman, because the Batman movie came out in the 60s, was the characters from that movie. And I know Derek...
So there wasn't a Batman movie before that? What was the one from the 30s or 40s?
Well, there was like serials, but I don't think there was like
just a serial? Okay.
Like the theatrical Batman films.
Okay. Yeah.
That, got released to the box office and things like that. Like, because they had like Superman and Batman stuff, or at least Batman stuff. Because I remember seeing the one from like the 30s in black and white.
Yeah.
Or the 40s, or whenever it was, prior to the color version from the 60s, the kind of camping one with Adam West and Burt Ward. But
yeah, I love that. It was probably the first Batman I saw, was that, because I think of course 89 was Tim Burton's, but I didn't see Tim Burton's in theaters. You know what I mean? Like I kind of knew what Batman was, but as far as watching stuff, like that was the first Batman show I watched, and then I saw Tim Burton's, and then the animated series that was also stellar. So it was like hard not to like Batman at that time, just because you had all three of those, and was like three different flavors of Batman that were all awesome on their own. Yeah,
I mean, to a lot of people, like Adam West was Batman until the Tim Burton film came out and went in a different
direction. Which was a very long time. Like nobody will never not hold that title of being, the most current Batman like ever again.
Yeah, because you kind of had Batman from the TV series that was in the 60s, and then the Tim Burton movie went to 89. So yeah, because Batman ran from 1966 to 1968, and Batman the movie is in 1966. Yeah. So, and that also had a big inspiration on the cartoon series that existed. And yeah, so like
what's weird too is when I saw you guys at the theater on Friday It Comes at Night.
Yeah.
I was wearing my Batman on a surfboard shirt, and it was the first time I'd ever wore it. It's my only Batman shirt I own. I just happened to be wearing it, and then he passed away the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, so Adam West also did a lot of different voiceover work. So he was in Family Guy as the mayor as Adam West. Mm-hmm. He had been in some web shows. I think he'd appeared, looking through IMDb, he had appeared on Big Bang Theory, and some video games, and he had been in on 30 Rock, and a bunch of different things he had been in throughout the years. And it just seemed like, he was in, like I said, the Family Guy is the main thing I remember seeing him in. He also did other voice work and stuff, but
yeah, I think they recently did a Batman, like direct to DVD movie or something that was the Burt Ward, Adam West Batman too. I didn't see that, but looking up, it says The Return of Cape Crusader, and I guess it showed in some theaters too.
And then he was in the Batman animated series as the Gray Ghost, like a character that Batman followed. So I remember that. I saw a lot of people posting clips from that after he passed away.
Yeah, I did too. I don't think I ever knew that he did that voice, though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I ever made that connection, but I haven't watched it since I was a kid, And
I think he was in Goosebumps in the TV series, in The Attack of the Mutant.
Yeah, it looks like he was in Tales from the Crypt also.
So, an actor that was in a bunch of stuff that, even though the series came out in the 60s, I watched the 60 to 68 series a lot when I was a kid. So Adam West always been somebody that I, enjoyed seeing in things. And so it's very sad he's passed away. And there's a lot of actors that, kind of these different iconic roles that's just like, as everybody's getting up there in age, because I believe he was 88, you're going to continue to see people pass away. I know everybody said that 2016 was a bad year, but 2017's lost a number of people as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's had an incredible run. You know, it's awesome that he wasn't just Batman, and then we kind of forgot about him until now. You know what I mean? Or at least forgot it, or at least not. We wouldn't have known him as anything else. Like, yeah, I'm sure tons of people, you know, have seen him way more on Family Guy as Mayor West than they have the original Batman show, or the one from the '60s. So, and he was a great character in that, in its own right.
Well, and too, like if you just look through his IMDb credits, he has stuff. You know, he didn't miss. He wasn't out of the public eye for any period of time. It's stuff, you know, from the '60s right on through, you know, his death. He was in things. So that's something that it's sad, and you know, he'll be missed. And especially for people that watch that Batman series growing up, you know, I think that was a big part of a lot of people's childhood, even though, you know, like our generation where that wasn't on TV, it was like reruns on Nick at Night or stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it would actually is. I think they're still on like MeTV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I don't have cable now, but when I did, I would watch that quite a bit. Like, it just seemed like the evergreen show. Like, and there really wasn't that many seasons of it, I don't think, because I think I was looking up stuff about that like quite a while back, and I was surprised. Was it like only 3 seasons or something?
Yeah, it only ran from 66 to 68.
Yeah. But I was surprised when I saw that, because I'm like, man, I feel like watching a ton of that. But yeah, I was kind of digging into the history of that a while back, as far as some of the behind the scenes stuff. And then I think another station wanted to pick it up, but they had destroyed like the set or certain things. You know what I mean? They basically just like demolished it, so it was going to cost too much for them to rebuild it and stuff. Yeah,
it lasted 3 seasons, and ABC was the network that had the show, and NBC had agreed to take over the series. But before that could happen, the sets were destroyed, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to build. So the deal was lost, and they just had to go and just do reruns and not continue the series.
That's a big bummer. But you know what? 3 strong seasons, though. You know. Yeah. So. Adam West will be missed. Speaking of sets, too, I was looking up stuff about Young Frankenstein. Did you see how they used the actual sets from the original Universal Frankenstein films?
No.
They apparently, I think they may have been looking for the guy. This is according to IMDb trivia. They were looking for the guy who designed them or something like that, and they didn't know if he was even still around. And then turns out they found him, you know, living in California somewhere. Yeah. And when they contacted him, he actually still had all the, and it was basically like the electronics in the lab and stuff. He still had all that stuff he had made in his garage. Yeah. So they just used it on that, and then gave him credit, because I don't think he was ever properly credited in the original films or original film or what. I wasn't clear on the details, but that's pretty awesome. Like, that's just one other thing that lends to the authenticity of Young Frankenstein, and kind of just makes that film work on a certain level that doesn't make it feel like just a cheap parody, you know? Yeah. So now I think we move into what we've been watching. And for me, that doesn't include a lot of stuff, because the past week I was finishing up the short film After the Slasher that we shot back at the end of April. We shot on April 30th. Then I shot an additional scene in May, and then we shot an additional scene in June on the, was it the 4th? Yeah, I think on Sunday, June 4th. So I spent last week getting that all wrapped up and done. So it's done now. It won't be going online for a little while, because we're going to submit to some festivals and see what happens with that. So until we find all the information, it will not be able to be released. I think I might put together a teaser for it, just a brief 10-second teaser, and get that out sometime soon, just because it helps with some of the film festival submissions to have a teaser. And the short film is... It sucks doing teasers for stuff that's 4 minutes, though, because, you know what I mean? It's really hard to not give away too much, but yeah. I think I'll just like do a 10-second thing. I think I'll just do like they've been doing for Twin Peaks, and just have like 4 different like 2-second shots that don't have any dialogue, and just show like characters and location, and then see how that works. But yeah, like it is kind of maddening once you get a short done. It's like, oh, I can't release it, because if you submit it to festivals, you can't put it online until after those festivals, or else they'll probably not want it.
So we'll have to see what happens with those. If anybody wants it, if not, then we can release it sooner than later. So at the very latest, they'll be released online in October. At the earliest, if whenever the notification dates for those festivals are, if they all say no, then we put it out earlier than that. But hopefully we'll get into at least one of them.
Yeah.
But because of that, I didn't really have a chance to much else. I watched that about 1,000 times as I was finishing it up. But then I saw it comes at night in theaters, and then it's kind of busy the rest of the weekend.
Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, I watched Young Frankenstein and that. Didn't really have a chance to watch much else. I caught up on I watched the new Twin Peaks because we're caught up on that and doing videos on it and stuff. And then that's kind of it. And then hopefully this week I'll be a little bit less busy and have more time. But
yeah, same here. The only thing I've watched is TV wise is Twin Peaks. I haven't watched. Actually, I did watch a little bit of Better Call Saul because I'm way behind on that. Like I'm only 3 or 4 episodes in, but I started catching back up to that, and then finish off Kimmy Schmidt. And because I just needed some like half-hour quick things to watch while eating, basically. Like that's all I've had time for as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Twin Peaks again. If you're watching the new show, make sure you check out. We have a separate video series where we recap each episode. So we'll be doing a new one very soon. I don't know, maybe tomorrow night, William.
Yeah.
If you're free. If not, we can do it the next night. But we try to get those out within a couple days after it airing. And that has been super enjoyable and really, really fun. And I'm really loving this season. And then, so I went to see The Mummy. We were having some discussions over doing It Comes at Night or The Mummy as far as a new release. And Derek was in the Mummy camp because I think he likes the Brendan Fraser version a lot.
Yeah.
I think he was just hoping. And then the reviews came out and he was like, okay, and then we decided not to do that one. But it's been a while since I've seen a bad, quote unquote, bad movie in theaters. So I decided to go just to check it out, to kind of see for myself and give some feedback on the podcast. And it is, if I wasn't seeing it for the podcast, like I went out to use the restroom through part of it. If I wasn't going to give any like feedback on it, I would have just walked into like Wonder Woman or something and saw the rest of that, which I've already seen that movie. I've already paid, I was just going to like, okay, I'm just going to like spend 15 minutes in here and then leave. So I feel like I got something.
Yeah.
It was so like, it had me like, I was not engaged in it at all. Like, normally, even if it's a bad film, sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to see where they're going to go with this or how it's going to wrap up. Like it lost me so much that I did not even care what happened to anything in this film. The only thing that like barely had me was that, okay, this is a connected universe thing. What are they going to do? Are they going to lead up to anything? And that's like the worst thing I think you could do as far as like not actually care about the movie, but care about financially what they're doing with the series. And it's kind of, that's how that film is. You know what I mean? You feel like they're just kind of worried about building this franchise. Man, what's that guy's name that's he's in Jurassic World and The New Girl?
Oh, Jake Johnson.
Yeah, Jake Johnson. So he, like very minor spoilers for this, he is kind of, it's almost like they're a buddy cop situation. They're in the military and basically just treasure hunters that like to sell treasure on the black market. So they have banter back and forth. Like Tom Cruise is the kind of guy who likes to leap headfirst into danger and always comes out fine. And Jake Johnson is kind of the wimpy guy that's like, just a really cliched, unfunny character because you've seen it a million times, like 30 years ago. It's very like a dated dynamic too, that most people do parodies of. When you do have characters that are kind of the bantery buddy cop, like Shane Black knows how to do that very well because he understands the genre. He'll kind of twist it on its head and he writes great dialogue. This is like terrible, terrible dialogue. When people like make fun of Big Bang Theory and those types of shows, sometimes like I don't love that show. I don't like it. I don't really watch it. And I think, it's pretty dumb, lowbrow stuff. But sometimes I like lowbrow quite a bit, but sometimes I do giggle at that show, if it's on or something. But I do think that the writing is pretty basic. as far as, they kind of jump over a low bar a lot of times just to kind of make the audience understand what the joke is.
Yeah.
And this feels like really bad TV sitcom writing, like in this movie. And it is like mind blowing. Like I haven't seen anything this cringeworthy in theaters and I don't know when. Like, I told you guys, there were moments when some of the dialogue exchanges were going on at the beginning of the film. Like I was literally cringing and hiding my face because I was like embarrassed for them and like embarrassed to be watching it. Like it was incredibly bad. Thankfully that banter goes away, but what's left is just a very cliche and boring movie. It's definitely feels like it comes from a place of somebody was giving an assignment. This isn't like somebody came to Universal and said, look, I love The Mummy. I'm a huge fan of it. I know why. I know how to make this film work in 2017. Here's are the things we need to do with it. I want to, show my love for it and make other people love it like I do. Like it does not feel like that. If it definitely feels like this is an assignment film where, somebody said, hey, do you want to direct The Mummy? Here's what I'll give you. Tom Cruise is going to star in it. This is what we're going to do. You're going to be part of a series. Maybe you can do the sequel. And somebody just took it on and kind of had to figure it out. And it just feels like a huge, huge mess.
There are 6 credited writers on the movie.
Yeah. And I think they said people didn't know that like 3 of them were credited until the film actually came out and they were on the credits or something.
Yeah.
So I think they were kind of maybe they just didn't have it published, or maybe they were kind of pushing under the rug, like how many hands this script has been through. And it's got some good writers on it, or, at least some talented people, but it's just you guys, it's like incredibly bad. It is definitely going to be, what's been the other worst film this year? Do we have one that we had talked about?
So Rings was really bad.
Yeah, Rings was really bad. But it was just like boringly bad. You know what I mean? Like,
and then
it
on
wasn't.
Alien Covenant, everybody was a little bit lower on it than you were, but
Yeah, I mean that's nothing compared to this. You know what I mean? Like Alien Covenant, totally get everybody's critiques and opinions, and I see where a lot of people are coming from, and it doesn't gel with you, and I totally get that. And Rings was very boring, and that was also cliche, and just I wanted to fall asleep watching that.
yeah.
But this is like on another level, and maybe I'm going to hold it against it, but it is a Tom Cruise film. It is a mummy film. You would expect something way better out of this. They also didn't spend $125 million on Rings.
Yeah.
That was a series they were just trying to probably maybe just make another paycheck on, maybe just make a little bit of money on, but this is their tentpole thing, and it came out like this. Like it is incredible, but it's also, it's the worst film I've seen this year. It's definitely worse than Rings because it is so cringeworthy. Moments of it are, and just kind of dumb a lot of times. There are a couple cool moments in there, or maybe some things you feel like Tom Cruise threw his hand in, like one little fight scene. Maybe he does kind of a cool thing where he punches through the skull of like a skeleton, so the skeleton is basically on his arm, and then he uses it to smash against a thing he's laying on, which that was really cool. But literally, like that's one move, and then the airplane sequence that's in the trailer, like a ton. They, of course, you see more of that in the film. That was kind of cool because you can tell they probably really shot that in a plane that was in zero gravity and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I haven't seen that done before in an action sequence like that. And I really feel like that's a Tom Cruise thing. You know what I mean? Maybe not. Maybe somebody else came up with it, but that felt like a very Tom Cruise thing. And sometimes those are just flat out impressive. He has some impressive stunts in his films, and he really likes to go for it. But that being said, not all of that sequence was maybe presented in the best way. Like I could see another director handling it way better. But the fact of the matter is they were tumbling around in zero gravity. So even if you had an iPhone shooting it, you know what I mean? It would be kind of cool. But there was there was one ridiculous moment though where they're spinning around, like, you're seeing it. they're being shot from like one end of the plane. So you're looking like towards the front of the cabin or the back or whatever. And they basically are rolling around it. Like they're on the floor, they're on the right side, they're on the ceiling, they're on the left side. Then they cut to the outside of the plane. Then they cut back and they're on the floor, on the right side, up, and then on the left. And then they cut out and they cut back in. And it's like 3 different cuts back and forth. And they're just continually rolling around that plane like forever. So there's just like goofy stuff in there like that. But it is, it is definitely bad for what it is. And I don't recommend anybody going to the theaters to see this. Like, even if you're curious, like I was, like I will go in and knowingly see movies that I don't think would be good. But a lot of times I'm fine sitting through them. It was very hard to sit through this film. So, and honestly, I think I would give it probably like a 1.5 out of 10, maybe. Like that bad.
Yeah.
Some people have said that they enjoyed it in kind of like a dumb way. I don't like. I would enjoy it with some friends laughing at it, like my enjoyment level would go up higher there. But like just sitting there watching that film, it was very, very, very bad. So do not go see it.
Yes. So that is The Mummy. And now we can move into our discussion of Young Frankenstein, which I think is a good juxtaposition because Young Frankenstein was made in the 70s. And it was made in 1974, and it was very much shot in the style of the original, like, Universal monster films, because in the movie itself, because it had been a while since I've watched it, because I've watched this multiple times, but I watched it mostly when I was younger, and rewatching it now, it's like, oh, they use a lot of iris transitions and different things that were the type of filmmaking techniques you would have used in the 40s when those original films were getting made. So it used styles and techniques that reminded you of that. And they shot it in black and white. And it actually had like the film grain to it. And it's not just like the digital stuff now.
I'd heard that they were really trying to push him to shoot color as well. And I'm glad he didn't, because it's an incredible looking film too. Like, it holds up really well, I think. And because it's in black and white, it just has the right feel. Like, it makes the humor work more than if it was in color, because there would be even another layer of disconnect, I think. Yeah,
I mean, and the look of it, just like I said, it looks like a movie from an earlier era. And, the budget, according to Wikipedia, the budget was $2.78 million, and the box office made $86 million, so it was a big hit, especially when you adjust that for inflation and everything. And so it's a movie that didn't take a ton of money to make, but, you see a lot of that on screen just because the sets are cool. And like I said, shooting it with some of the stuff from the original films and then shooting it in a way that mimicked that original style. Because there's like the iris display, they would literally just like close out the lens of the camera or the aperture of the camera so that you would go to black. And they have like wipes and fades to black. So a lot of techniques that are just, it's funny because like a lot of video editing software now can do all that stuff. And whenever you see that in modern things, you're like, oh, that looks so terrible. How'd you do that? But like when those older films in the like the 40s and 50s, that was stuff that was the technology. There wasn't, non-linear editing programs where you can go pull the clips out and edit it. Like, you had to do stuff like on camera or with the actual film. So it just helped kind of capture the feeling of those older films while being, shot in the 70s. And, like I said, it has Gene Wilder in it. It's directed by Mel Brooks. And it came before some of the movies like Spaceballs. But I believe that this came out after a few movies that Mel Brooks had done were not huge hits.
It was after Blazing Saddles, too, because I think Gene Wilder had the idea for this, and he was having lunch or something with Mel Brooks. And I think he said, hey, I have an idea for a Frankenstein film. And I think Mel Brooks was like way against it, because by that time they had really ran their course. And he's like, there's been, the son of Frankenstein, the cousin of Frankenstein, the son-in-law of Frankenstein. And he was like, no, this is like somebody who is a member of that family, but is kind of, wants to distance itself from them because of all the crazy stuff that's happened and everything. So from what I read, they worked on the script together and would go meet up in I think Gene Wilder's apartment or a place, at night and work on the script. And that was that.
Yeah, it said that they came up with it during the Blazing Saddles. And this was too, so previous to this, Mel Brooks had done The Producers and Willy Wonka and The Chocolate Factory, which weren't huge box office hits at the time. They're kind of failures, but they became cult classics.
You mean Gene Wilder?
Or, both.
Did Mel Brooks work on Willy Wonka?
Or, no, wait a minute. No, he did not. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was just...
Okay.
I mean, so, yeah, The Producers was Mel Brooks, and then Willy Wonka and The Chocolate Factory. So the box office kind of shaved Gene Wilder, was proven to some extent, but, if you have recent flops, it's a little bit different in Hollywood now, too, because now people get sent to, director's jail. But actors don't typically get sent to, actors jail, because, Johnny Depp's been in some huge box office bombs, but continues to get put in these big franchise films for some reason. And yeah, so Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks, had some hits and worked together and stuff. So then doing a movie that's a throwback film to the Universal monsters, like you said, after they had worn those out, and there were so many iterations and so many different things that probably made fun of those types of films, and so many things that it takes on that. To do that probably was not a super popular idea at the time, when they're getting it off the ground. But then I'm really glad they did, because the movie itself, even though it's a comedy, it wouldn't feel out of place with those original films. Because at least the things that elicit laughter were all on purpose and were jokes. It wasn't, just kind of stilted writing from, a different era.
It wasn't like, the Mummy film from 2017. It was all intended jokes.
Yes, and the comedy in it, there were some goofy things here and there. And two, you had Peter Boyle as Frankenstein's monster, or Frankenstein's monster, as he pronounces it. And so you had a lot of comedy with that. And really, we'll do full spoilers on this because it's from 1974. I'm sure everybody's seen this movie a few times. And it's 105-minute running time. So it's not quite 2 hours, but it doesn't move slowly. It moves pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's not, it's not a snappy film as far as the humor doesn't, it's not like it's a rapid fire style of comedy, but it doesn't need to be. It works so well. And yeah, I don't feel like it's a slow film at all. It's super well paced, because I feel like all the scenes are very short as well. And they just, I don't know. It's every scene works too. Every scene works. Every joke hits. There's never, and the pacing is really well. There's never a lull in it, I don't think. And I think it is the kind of down periods between jokes are the right length of time too, because they work for this style of comedy. Because even sometimes, there may be a joke and it may take you a second to catch up, or you may still be laughing about it and enjoying it,
Yeah, because I remember watching this for the first time when I was, I'd seen bits of it on TV, but I think I watched it from beginning to end when I was in sixth grade maybe. And the movie was, not, there's nothing in it that's objectionable. You could show this to a younger kid. It's not anything concerning. I mean, it's rated PG, so it's not, there's no real language. There's not a lot of, there is some sex in it. And out of all the stuff in it that I was looking at when I was watching it, through the modern lens, the only thing I could think of that doesn't quite hold up to modern standards, and it's all depending on how you view it, is when the monster has sex with his fiance, with Frankenstein's fiance. And it starts out, she's like, no, but then I guess he has a huge penis. And then she starts singing and stuff. So where that rates on the rapey scale is up for question. But that was really the only thing that stuck out to me as being kind of a product of a previous era, where today that might be addressed a little bit differently than it was in the original film. because maybe
But
like
yeah, it's aged super well. You know, this film, some comedies don't age well, you know, some of the humor, but there's something, you know, it's almost like they made something timeless in making a film that tried to be, you know, it's specifically well, I say a period piece, but yeah, like a period piece, but also from a certain period of cinema. And for some reason, because they did that, I think it aged much better than even a lot of other Mel Brooks films from that era. Just something about it, you know, it's, I guess, stylistically or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because doing the kind of, you know, like iris and, you know, wipe transitions and things that were kind of the time that those original Universal films came out, doing those types of things in the movies in the 70s, I think that gives it a more timeless quality than sticking to conventions and things that are just, you know, of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, like you can tell it was made, you know, not in the same era as those early Universal films. So because and it's like, you know, it knows what those are. So because it's like a throwback film, it feels like it could have been a throwback film made in any era. You know, it could have been made in the 90s, in the 2000s.
Well,
like because it's by design that way.
And the humor in it is mostly kind of broad humor that's not just pop culture references. Mm-hmm. So the humor is kind of, you know, wide reaching, and you could get just as much out of most of it today as you could when it came out. Just because, like I said, it's not, you know, just, you know, mile a minute pop culture jokes like a lot of movies do today, or, you know, even like something like Spaceballs had more like of the time references, as opposed to Young Frankenstein was more just general comedy and things that were just generally funny and still work today, regardless of when you watch it. And, you know, it's on a lot of like list of like 100 funniest movies or things like that. So I think that is true, and I think it's still funny today, and I think it holds up. You know, you don't have to know all of the, like, you don't really need to have seen the original Frankenstein to get this movie, as long as you're aware of the character.
Yeah.
Or the trope of, you know, scientist creates creature and things like that. So I mean,
and that's another genius of it, because it's just there's so much a part of pop culture that anybody at least knows kind of the touchstones of what this film is kind of based on. So it just works. Yeah, you don't have to see it. Like it's a, you know, I hate to call it a parody, because it's, I don't know, I feel like it's way more serious than that. Like, you know what I mean? Almost like it respects it more. It's just, oftentimes when you call something a parody, it almost feels like it's an imitation to get a cheap laugh, you know?
Well, I think too, like
so much smarter than that for some reason.
Because this isn't the later,
it's
like
not
the
scary movie.
It's not the scary movie, or especially the scary movie sequels, or the stuff like Epic Movie or the Meet the Spartans, or all the stuff that's come out in recent years, where the only jokes are the references themselves, typically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's like, oh, here's like a Harry Potter thing, and now there's a guy from 300, and here's The Matrix, and here's Scream, and it's not, the references themselves aren't the joke, because once you don't get those, once you're outside of the context of like the 3-year period of time where that movie is made, none of those jokes land. Like if you showed somebody, if you showed a young kid that had never seen Scream, and what you did last summer, you know, The Matrix, or any of those movies, and you showed them a scary movie today, a lot of those jokes are just gonna go right over their head. Or, you know, like Epic Movie, I think, was the one that like referenced like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and a bunch of stuff like that. Like somebody watching that today that didn't see all the movies it's referencing would just be like, this isn't funny. What is this? Like, the fact this thing shows up in and of itself is not funny.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like what Family Guy does a lot, where it just throws out references of things as the joke. And if you don't have the context for it, or it's something you're not familiar with, it's like, oh, well, just this thing showing up, like, oh, this actor being referenced, I have no idea who that is. That's not funny. As opposed to like Young Frankenstein is like, there's more, the situations in the movie itself are what lead to the jokes, not just references to things that happened in those, you know, original movies.
Yeah. So Marty Feldman too is Igor, I think, is like stellar in this as well. I mean, Peter Boyle, of course, like everybody, Cloris Leachman, Terry Garr, like they're all stellar, but like Peter Boyle, I mean, Marty Feldman, like he gets I laugh a lot at him throughout this entire film. Like every
Yeah.
time, like I'm always having my eye on him because he's so animated and great. And it's like always the jokes and the situations around him are always very, very good and just super ridiculous.
Well, then like the hump changes sides and
Yes, yeah, yeah, and you know the whole brain thing, the Abby normal.
yeah.
There's just like there's so many great iconic moments in this film, and there's just like there's dumb, you know, the dance number is like phenomenal.
Yeah.
Even just whenever the monster sets on the seesaw with the girl, and like the parents are freaking out, and she flies through the window at the last moment. Like there's just like dumb physical humor gags like that too that are just they're broad enough, but they're also a little clever, you know, and kind of goofy in all the right ways. Like this film really goes for it and is really dumb, but you know, it's the right exact balance of dumb that makes it seem very intelligent at the same time and just flat out funny.
Well, then too, like Gene Hackman is the blind man when he's trying to give young Frankenstein, he's trying to pour him like soup, and then pours like in his lap. He's like, "Arr!" There's all different things like that, and then he catches him on fire with the cigar when he's trying to light it. So you have all the comedy there. It's just kind of broad comedy that like is funny regardless of the context. It's not a reference to some other movie.
Yeah, or the era. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's just, it doesn't need, it can stand on its own.
So it's one of the movies that, you know, by being a comedy or a parody to some extent, it also becomes a bona fide entry into the genre. And something like in more recent eras, you know, like the past 20 years, like Shaun the Dead did that with zombie films. And that it made a zombie film that had a lot of jokes and things like that. But in and of itself, it was a zombie film. And Young Frankenstein is a, you know, adaptation of the, you know, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And it's lighthearted and fun. Like I had a lot more fun than this. Than what was the one that came out in the 90s, I think, that had Robert De Niro in it. Oh, what was it? Just Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 94. So that kind of came out after the Bram Stoker's Dracula. That had like Keanu Reeves in it and Anthony Hopkins and Winona Ryder and like that movie. So it came out kind of in the wake of that. And I remember that, you know, and also had Kenneth Branagh in it as Frankenstein, as Victor Frankenstein. It was directed by Kenneth Branagh. So this, you know, came out years, like, you know, 30 or 20 years before Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I'd much rather go back and watch Young Frankenstein than some of the straight adaptations. Just because it's fun and, you know, it covers a lot of the same ground, but without the weird.
And you feel like you're getting an honest film out of it too. Like you feel like you're getting an entry into a Universal movie monster film at the same time.
Yeah, because like, what was it? So Dracula was 1992 and it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola. So you have like these kind of like serious adaptations of these types of characters. But then, like, to me, Young Frankenstein is just a much more enjoyable watch. So I would go back and watch that over, you know, some of these other interpretations of Frankenstein. And like I said, it looks, the aesthetics of it, it looks like it was from that original era. And unlike today, where you can just throw, like, you know, film convert or some, like, film grain filters in black and white and stuff really easily, like, you know, this movie is actually, like, shot in black and white, which is a little bit different than just shooting a movie in color today and then deciding to make it black and white. Because that's pretty easy to do, but it's, you know, often easy to do poorly. So, yeah, so Young Frankenstein's a movie. I know, like I said, Derek didn't get a chance to be on, but, you know, he also loves that movie as well, because we watched that when I was younger multiple times. And it's one of those movies, like I said, if you have a kid today that hasn't watched a lot of horror stuff, that's something that's kind of easy to start them out on, because it's got humor. There's nothing really bad in it. There's a little bit of sex stuff, but, like, it's, you know, more insinuation and innuendo. It's not like... you know, a lot of network TV stuff today is over sexualized and has people like laying in bed where the only thing you can't see are the genitals and the breast. Like, it's not like that. It's more comedic sexual innuendo that a lot of kids would just go over their head and they wouldn't get it. It'd be fine. But yeah, like looking on IMDb, it's got an 8.0 out of 10 is the average user review out of 120,000 reviews. The Metacritic is 80, And Rotten Tomatoes is, you know, a little bit less reliable for older films just because a lot of the reviews of them at the time weren't when it was getting reviewed in 1974. I would assume a lot of those original reviews have not been archived online.
Yeah, the web pages have been lost since then. The sites are down. They didn't maintain them.
The text only sites. It's got a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes out of
right,
54 reviews. And surprisingly, it's got four rotten reviews. So I need to go read those to see who those are. But yeah, so like, if we had to give this movie, or we do, to score this movie, like trying to think, I would probably give it a 9 out of 10 because I just enjoy watching it. It's a movie, whenever it's on, I'll watch it. It's something that, you know, this week, just because I have so much stuff going on, Julie would want to watch this with me, but she didn't get a chance to. But she loves this movie too. Like, there's almost nobody I know who, not even horror fans, just movie fans who don't like Young Frankenstein, because I have friends that aren't big horror people that still watch that movie and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's great for it really is great for all audiences. I think I talked about it before. My grandparents, we would have like not that long ago, less than a decade ago, like drive-in nights essentially at their house. Like a friend of the family would bring his projector, and we had a big screen there, and they'd have food and like invite like neighborhood people over, and a bunch of my grandparents, their friends, and it would be kids in all ages, like people from 70 to 80 to 3-year-olds. And like, this was one of the movies we watched one time. And of course, like, it's like the perfect film for that because everybody can enjoy moments from this film. And it's just, I think it does a good job of being entertaining for all ages and for all time periods too.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely I'd probably 9, I think is maybe right, but I would say easily give it a 9. You know what I mean? Like, that's not even I would no way go lower than a 9. I don't know if I go at 9.5 because it's not one that I watched like on repeat or anything like that, but it is one I would watch at any time it being on, and I've seen it multiple times and really love it.
It doesn't have like, I guess, like narrative heft or like dramatic chops. So it's not like an uber important movie for the development of film, but it's just so damn enjoyable that it's hard not to give it a good review and to recommend it all the time. Like, this is a movie that, like I said, like I talk like, oh, could you show this to a younger audience? Could you show this like around Halloween if you have friends that aren't necessarily huge horror fans? In that case, I think yes on both. I think you could show that to somebody younger, and if they've never seen the original Universal films, they would probably still have fun with this one, just being aware of the general mythology of like Frankenstein.
Watching this too, it made me want to watch Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, because that was the first Frankenstein film I'd ever saw, and I loved that as a kid and watched that all the time. So at some point, I want us to give that one a watch.
Yep. So I think now I can move into our review of It Comes at Night, and we're going to start out without spoilers, and then we'll go into spoilers in a specific spoiler section, just because I think this is a movie that you want to have the ending ruined. So first we'll discuss it without spoilers. I know it's a movie that's been somewhat contentious with the reviews I've seen coming out of it. So It Comes at Night is a new movie that's from A24 that's also released stuff like The Witch, and it's directed by Trey Edward Schultz, and it stars Joel Edgerton as well as Christopher Abbott, Carmen Ejogo, Riley Keough, Kelvin Harrison Jr. So it's got, Joel Edgerton, then like the rest of the cast I hadn't really heard of before. I'm sure they've probably been in stuff I just haven't, I didn't recognize them immediately. So it's pretty much just Joel Edgerton is the star in this, and kind of a lower budgeted film. Those around like a budget of $5 million. And it's kind of a prestige horror film that has been getting a lot of rave reviews from critics, and I've seen a lot of advertisement about how good it was. And I know it debuted at some festivals and got a lot of buzz. The basic plot synopsis from IMDb is secure within a desolate home as an unnatural threat terrorizes the world. A man has established a tenuous domestic order with his wife and son, but this will soon be put to test when a desperate young family arrives seeking refuge. So I think that's really all you need to know about the overall story setup.
And very minor spoilers, like he's the star of it, but really he's kind of not the main character though.
Well, yeah,
Granted, there's not many characters in this movie at all. Like what you see in the trailer is pretty much what you get. But emotionally, he is not the main character. Like it hinges on another character that I think that kind of you get into the psyche of more than him.
yeah. So like Joel Edgerton's a big name, so he's the
Yeah.
one that's in all the trailers and when they're selling it on, because more people are aware of his work than anybody else's.
Yeah, and they're all kind of in it equally. It's just he's kind of a strong father figure, and so he's kind of just takes charge, and his character really doesn't seem like the only maybe weakness he has is he cares for his family, so he is he's obviously worried about that, but you don't really kind of get any sort of internal struggle. Like he knows what he needs to do, and he doesn't really change much maybe in the film, which is totally fine because kind of the son is kind of somebody who does a lot of the internal struggles and kind of I guess maybe deals with things more on an emotional level due to the events that are happening around them.
Yeah, I mean, I think too the biggest thing to get on this movie is that. So the trailers I've seen for it made it appear to be more of like a monster film or more of an ambiguous film as to what happens. And the title itself, It Comes at Night, is quite, like evocative of, horror imagery.
Yes, yeah.
So I think that's the movie's being kind of sold that way, either intentionally or unintentionally. That's how it's being sold. And what it is more of like a tense, like thriller about the interactions of two small families, and in this world where there's some type of threat that's kind of like a virus or a disease or something that's not really gone into in any major way, and you don't really get to see too much about it. It's mostly just like a little snippets here and there. So you're in this world that a lot of these infected, or I wouldn't say it's a zombie movie because I don't think that's really what it is.
Yeah, and like again, this is minor spoilers, but this maybe is to help you out to not be disappointed. Like, it's not a situation of where people are getting affected and attacking, other people. So don't expect them to be fighting off family members or something like that, because that's not what this is. And I was kind of glad. I'm saying I was glad for it, but I was totally happy with that because I didn't need just another zombie film.
Yeah, we didn't need another Walking Dead-esque thing, although this did feel somewhat like a bottle episode of a series that has to deal with like virus or infectious disease or something. Like it kind of felt like a bottle. It seemed like the budget was $5 million, and it takes place mostly in a single location. And that's with a lot of these lower budgeted horror films. They do that. A lot of lower budgeted films in general do that, just because it's hard to shoot in multiple locations when you don't have a huge budget. $5 million might seem like a lot, but for a movie that has, at least one big star in it, Joel Edgerton, like that's not a huge budget really, for the type of movie it is. But, like in the movie, the cinematography is beautiful. Like the movie looks great. There's a lot of stuff that looks like it's shot kind of in like natural light and stuff that's shot, with minimal lighting inside of this house. So it looks great. And all the acting itself is very strong. Just my... the only issues that I had with it are more of what you see or don't see in the story. And because in the moments themselves, it's very tense and, involving, and you do get kind of drawn into the characters and what's going on with them. Because like Joel Edgerton's Paul, and then like his son is Travis. So you get pulled into like the things that they're dealing with, and like Travis and his interactions and things that he's thinking about. So you do get drawn into it. But like I said, I think if the trailers made people think there was more that was going to happen than what actually happened, I could see them leaving upset. Because the theater I was in, there wasn't a ton of people there, granted, because it was like a showing during the middle of the day. But when it was over, it seemed like the majority of the people who left were not very happy.
Yeah, I heard somebody say, "Oh, nothing comes at night."
Yeah, which is a common kind of complaint with a lot of these prestige horror films. Which
I feel like we're just now starting to get wider releases. Like I was kind of talking to you and Derek about this, or maybe in Slack or something. But like I feel like now audiences are starting to be kind of challenged a little bit more, or maybe their expectations are challenged a little bit more, because it isn't this isn't a kind of just a popcorn horror film that, this isn't Rings where you've got your kind of cliche or stereotypical moments that like, okay, we need to hit these points to kind of give the audiences this type of scene here and this type of scene here. And because they responded well to it, like it wasn't made in service of making money from a wide audience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like we said before, like The Witch, I think, was a movie where the critical praise for it changed expectations for people. Because when you have, at least in that movie, when you had, you showed this trailer that showed some like kind of scary imagery, and then you have a quote from Stephen King saying the scariest film of the year or years or whatever it was he said. Then I think that creates a certain level of hype and and then a certain level of expectation for the film that the film was never intending to live up to or answer or fulfill. Like that wasn't their goal. It's just the way the advertising worked. It made people expect one type of movie, and then you see it and it's a different type of movie. And the way The Witch ended when I saw it in the theater I was at, which was relatively full, people were pissed when it was over. And I could see the same thing happening with It Comes at Night because it has like I think a D cinema score, which is really low because a lot of movies that are terrible movies get an A minus, and like anything below an A is kind of considered bad just because like usually the movies, if they effectively market and target the movie at the crowd that's going to like it, they should get an A because even if the movie itself isn't good, the people who went out and saw it will likely like it if they were effective at marketing it to the audience that would enjoy it. So whenever you see a big variance like that between like critical consensus and like cinema score, you know that something was missold or people expected something different than what they got. And I could totally see that with this movie. But I myself, like, I don't even think I watched the actual trailer for it. I think I just saw like bits and pieces, like the shorter, like 30-second like trailers, and didn't watch even all that. So I went into it not really having seen any of the trailers or remembering anything from them at all. And I knew that it was kind of like a slower burn, like prestige horror film, and not, like I said, it's not a zombie film or anything like that, but it's not 28 Weeks Later or Dawn of the Dead, like the 2004 remake, or I knew it was nothing like that.
Yeah.
I went in knowing that it was, most likely like a single location, smaller budget, smaller cast film, and that's what it was. So I didn't really have that disconnect in terms of what to expect out of it. But I think that was just the thing I've seen. And Derek wasn't big on wanting to see this movie because the trailers, because I think at least a lot of people get burned by like these indie horror films or these, or indie thriller films that get a lot of buzz because a lot of people see them at festivals and hype them up, and then you see it, and it doesn't really live up to what you expected or what the trailer promised. And I know people also had that problem with, like, It Follows. They didn't think it lived up to all the hype. And once again, like, we liked It Follows.
I get that it's hard for people not to get excited because you want to be excited for things. You know what I mean? Like, I've been disappointed so many times, or kind of, I know that, you kind of got your own preferences on movies. Everybody has their own kind of flavors that they like, and yours isn't going to be exactly the same as everybody else's. Like, I would be hard pressed to find somebody that likes all the movies I do the exact same amount that I do. You know what I mean? So, so I kind of always, at least if they get really good reviews, I at least try to pay attention to them. And especially because we're doing this podcast, like before this movie, I probably would have seen it still based on the reviews, but there would have been some movies, especially The Mummy, that I would have just said, okay, I'll just wait till it comes out because whatever, you know what I mean? But, I would just kind of wait until it comes out to DVD or something like that. But yeah, for me, like sometimes I expect, I don't want to say the worst, but I was expecting like, okay, this is probably going to be very slow and kind of be about the character interactions. And it very much is about the character interactions, but surprisingly, I didn't think it was as slow as I thought it was going to be. There's not like a lot of huge moments in the film. Is it under 90 minutes?
It
97 minutes.
is. Yeah, it's not super long, which
Yeah.
is
Again, minor spoilers, but there's kind of maybe I would say three big moments in the film, possibly. There's drama throughout with some of the characters at certain moments, but almost seems like there's a few like centerpiece scenes to this film that kind of create a nice flow. And those scenes alone had enough excitement for me. And I'm not saying like a lot happened necessarily, but just the tension. Sometimes a lot of stuff does happen in those scenes, and maybe sometimes it's just kind of the atmosphere and mood. But it was enough for me to where it had me super engaged, and I really, really liked the way they handled it. And as you mentioned before, like it's a beautifully shot film, and out in nature and kind of the woods and stuff. And for me, that did a lot, like that right there, and not because of just the way it looked, because of the way it felt. Like I really liked kind of feeling like, the feeling of being isolated in nature. Like I know it's a horrifying situation for those people, but it's almost like there's something else to it. Like, okay, reality, civilization is kind of broken down, and it's almost like this film lets you kind of be with nature for a bit, especially in the earlier parts of the film when, maybe the ball isn't rolling so fast. Definitely things kind of start out right away. It doesn't just open up and you sit there forever with nothing going on. But kind of once you get some good footing in this film and kind of figure out what's going on, at least as much as you're going to figure out. I don't know. I thought the way it was directed, like he did a really good job of having the feel of nature, and I don't, maybe some people it totally did not affect them in that way. And they were waiting for, maybe they just wanted kind of some more plot or story elements, but just because of the way it was shot and edited and all those things kind of, I think, made up a lot for me. And it is very bare on kind of plot. It's more kind of about the story of these people, but it's not like it's hinging on specific plot points or your typical MacGuffin or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's not like all of a sudden these people have to get from point A to point B, or else they're all going to die, for survival, for water, or something like that. There's nothing like that there. And you could see them, if they put that in there, it would be much easier for people to kind of be engaged with the characters. Because it's easier when they have like a specific goal that's easy to understand. But instead, the filmmaker decided to kind of, I feel like, let you live with these characters where they're having to live here every day. Like this is their life, and you're kind of living there with them. So I thought that was handled really well, and I liked I liked I liked all the characters, but I liked the son. I liked Joe Edgerton. Like I said, he was the reason why I was like, okay, I do want to see this. Good reviews, and he's in it. Like, I think he is just stellar. So all those things really worked for me. And like I said, those moments of tension that are in the film, I thought they were really, 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 really well executed. Some of my kind of really, honestly, like some of the moments in film this year that have affected me the most, as far as, I guess, grab my attention. You know what I mean? Like they had my full attention, and I really enjoyed the way they were all handled. And I don't feel like any of those kind of misstepped either. Sometimes you can see things going into cliche territory, and I'm not saying it's like totally like unpredictable out of left field, but they just felt very naturalistic, and they didn't feel forced or super cliched, even if some moments are kind of maybe some things you maybe have seen before or something. So it's very much that type of film. It's about being in the moment. And I know Derek was like, I want to wait for DVD for this. I might like it. And I totally get that, because some of these films are challenging in a certain way, and they may not hit you for that. And for me, like when I watch some films like this at home, they're challenging, because I am on my phone or something like that. So I think even before the site, like there was several films that were a little bit slower that started coming out that I started making, a point to go see in theaters, because I realized like, if I'm in a theater, I'm actually going to pay attention and kind of let it soak in a little bit. Whereas if I'm at home, I have a lot easier time at home kind of not paying attention And when it's a film that is kind of about being there in the moment, like, you know what I mean? It's the theatrical experience, I think, matters a lot more in those types of films. And I think it's great that this got a wide release and it wasn't a limited release. And I'm really glad I got to see it in theaters, because if the first time I saw it was at home and I wasn't kind of engaged, I could see me totally like just brushing it to the side, possibly, aside from some key moments.
I think too, like something that was I could see being a valid complaint with the movie is that, well, too, like looking at Rotten Tomatoes, so the audience scores a 43% and the critics is a 86%. So it's half of the critic score for the audience score, which is interesting. But I think that something that is a valid complaint is that the movie leaves a lot of stuff vague, like the situation that you're dropped into in terms of where society is at as a whole, in terms of like how broken down is it, what exactly is going on, what type of virus or sickness or whatever, like what is it? Like there's really nothing giving to you on that ground at all. And some of the events in the movie happen off screen and leave things ambiguous, which can be good in some cases. And I didn't necessarily have a problem with it, but I could see people wanting to see more of some of the details of what happened, because there's really not much in the text of the movie that tells you sometimes like what exactly it is that happened, especially towards some of the larger things at the end.
Yeah, I mean, people want to know. You know what I mean? Like people get mad sometimes when certain people maybe get mad when there's ambiguous endings or stuff like that. Like for me, I almost felt like they explained it away in the film that you're not supposed to know, and they gave you good reason. Like, you know, again, minor spoiler, but you know, Joe Egerton, his character actually asks, he's like, you know, somebody, do you know what's happening out there? Do you know what's going on? Like for me, I felt like you were kept in the dark because the characters were kept in the dark. And that was like a scary situation to be in, because all they knew is that some bad things were happening around them. And it seems like they just either had a home there already, or they, you know, hauled ass, found some place in the woods, and then basically were disconnected from society and did not find it safe enough to venture out. And so they were kind of isolated. And that's what you had, that feeling of isolation in the woods, and kind of just, this is their life. And not a lot maybe as exciting as happening, other than the fear of that virus or whatever, and not really knowing how to get infected. Like, you know what I mean? They kind of didn't know anything about any of the science behind it, but why would they? You know, it's not like and it seemingly they haven't encountered hundreds of people and are in a community and have been talking to people. Like they are very isolated, and you can tell, like they make a point to let you know that those characters don't know what the hell is going on either. Like that's one of the first things he asked this other guy. He's like, what is going on? Do you know anything? Or you know, are there other people out there? Like, and I kind of liked that it pulled things back and it didn't try to over explain it, because, you know, at the end of the day, it is kind of a virus, you know, almost a zombie film, and that civilization is crumbling because of some sort of virus. So I've seen that before, and really whatever answer they're going to give, like, is it going to be that exciting? Probably not, because we've heard 1,000 of those before.
The questions raised are more interesting than what the answers would be. And
yeah, because we've you know, how can they make an interesting answer at this point that is that much more different than the things you've heard?
And one thing I think is funny is that I've seen a few people call the movie a cousin of Eli Roth's Cabin Fever, or similar to Cabin Fever in some basic ways. And that like a sickness is kind of going on, but then the people, just because of that sickness, they are the antagonist and protagonist, not necessarily the disease or whatever itself. So this is, you know, when you're comparing this to Cabin Fever, you know, like Cabin Fever, the original one was more just like a faux exploitation film, or just a little bit of a more modern twist on like, you know, 80s and 70s type movies. So this isn't that. This is much more, you know, character focused and better acting and things like that. So it's
Cabin Fever is much more of a genre film, you know, and you had your kind of your archetypical characters in that. This film is very much like it's like, it's hard to even call it a thriller, but there's some thrilling moments, but this is more of just a drama, you know. Like I think describing it as a drama, if you go in knowing that any little like quote unquote horror elements or suspense moments that pop in will be great little surprises, basically.
I think too, like if you know, this is much more comparable, like just in terms of tone and all that type of stuff, to like say the original George Romero Night of the Living Dead compared to the more recent like Dawn of the Dead remake or Walking Dead or something. So it's much more of like a slow burn character study versus, you know, action going on left and right. And yeah, so it's more of, you know, more contained film. But I guess we can give this like our scores and then move into spoilers. We keep kind of just jumping around a bunch of this stuff just to spoil it. So, like I said, it's looking right now on Rotten Tomatoes. The movie has an 86%. On IMDb, the average user score is 7.2 out of 10. And the Metacritic score is 79. So, like, I went back and forth on what I would rate this movie. And, like, I know, so, like, when we saw this movie, I saw this movie, Julie, and then coincidentally, we were at the same theater, and you and Sean and you and everybody were seeing the screening after us. And I think we probably sound a little bit negative coming out of it.
Yeah, Julie was like, well, it was a movie.
And then, like, she kind of, like, lightened up on it the more she thought about it over the course of the weekend. And I was more of just, like, what it was very good. But, like...
What is it? What was it what you wanted? Was it, you know, something that was up your alley?
So, like, you know, the IMDb score, like, 7.2, and then, like, the Metacritic, 79, and the Rotten Tomatoes, 86. Like, I don't know if I'll give, like, an 8.6 out of 10, but I think, like, it's definitely worthy of, like, a 7 out of 10. Like, it was so well done, and everything you saw was well done and well acted and everything. It's just, like, I would have liked to have seen more out of it. I get this, you know, $5 million budget, hour and a half running time. It was more of a slice of some thing going on. And I think that, you know, if you go into with your expectations properly calibrated, you'll enjoy it. But if somebody goes in wanting it to be, and two, like if you want scares out of it, this movie really isn't going to have any scares.
No.
Like maybe there's like a kind of jump scare, like in some dream sequences type things maybe, but like it's not a horror movie in that regard. It has you know, like horror imagery and some like violence and stuff, but it is not jump scares and meant to have you on the edge of your seat with tension because you're afraid of something. It's not that type of movie. If you go in expecting that, then you probably give it like a 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10, or because there's a lot of really low reviews out there, like user reviews, because people just went in and then it wasn't at all what they wanted. So I do understand that criticism and that, you know, critique, but I went in kind of knowing that it was, you know, low budget, it's kind of single location horror or, you know, thriller, whatever.
And
genre.
yeah, not really a straight genre film as far as like, hey, we're going to make a horror film. You know what I mean? Like it's not that really.
Yeah. So I went in with my expectations properly calibrated. I enjoyed it. So I think like a 7 out of 10 is good for that.
Yeah. For me, like really, I enjoy the characters. Like I said, I really liked kind of just the way he handled, you know, being in the forest and everybody, the family living there. I really like love something about that I can't really put my finger on. Maybe it like cliche to sound, but maybe it did feel like it like transported me to another place where you kind of did feel like you were living, you know, it wasn't fast moving. And I think it worked for this because their lives really weren't fast moving, you know? But that being said, I also didn't think it was really slow either. Like I was engaged the entire time. And in the moments of suspense, like maybe it's because I've been playing that game, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. You know, I talked to you about it where like 100 people get dropped on an island and basically you can die really fast. And there's a circle that kind of closes in on the island. So it funnels everybody to the center, to a center point. And so you're kind of always on edge because if you get shot, you're done. You know, you may play 20 minutes and make a dumb mistake. So there was like, you know, one specific moment in this that made me feel very much like that, like where it's, you know, if you see somebody else that they're probably a threat. And I thought that moment was handled like so well. And maybe it's because I've been playing that game and like that game actually like affects me on a physical level. Like it, you know, it makes your heart like pound really bad. Like it's not like Call of Duty where you get shot and you restart or whatever. And that's what this film started giving me, that same sensation almost, because I'm like, this is a seemingly brutal film, you know, so somebody could get capped at any moment and be done. And that's kind of how this felt. Like it felt like life could be taken away at any moment. And obviously there was no help going to be around because they were isolated. So just because a couple of those moments, I think were like so well executed. Like the director could not have directed those sequences any better, I don't think. And I really do think he has a really good handle on suspense in the way he was trying to do it, you know. But really, because of those and kind of Joe Egerton and a lot of, I would give it a 9 probably. I was kind of going back and forth. Like, honestly, as at a certain point in the film, I'm like, oh man, this is almost a 9.5. I wouldn't give it that, but I do kind of try to keep thinking back, like, would I watch this a lot over again? And I think because of some of those moments and the way they're handled, and honestly, because I like filmmaking, you know what I mean? Like, I think I'd want to watch them on that regard too, to kind of just see how he constructed some of those and how they worked out. It's not one that I could put on at night because I probably would fall asleep watching if I've seen it a few times. I don't know if I'm going to go out and buy it right away, only because I'm very selective. But if I had quite a bit of disposable income, I think this is one I would buy and kind of watch all the special features because I'm very interested in the director and what he does next. I hope he continues to get work because I think it's easy to see there's talent behind the camera there.
Yeah.
And it may not be exactly what you wanted, or maybe it's not right up your alley, but it's easy to see like what he was trying to do. He did it really well. You know, he has a really good command of the camera and directing and stuff. So it would be great to see him, you know, kind of, maybe get a story that has more meat on the bones. Get a Fincher script or something like that. You know what I mean? And have this guy take a shot at it. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. And also too, I can see people being disappointed, and I would not blame anybody if they said, I wouldn't think like, oh, you didn't understand it or something like that, because there's not a lot to understand. You know, this isn't like trying to be, there's some like little dream sequences, but it's not trying to be, anything with too weird of concepts or high on symbolism or something like that. Like there may be some of that hidden in there, but it's not that type of film where if maybe you don't understand it, then you're not going to enjoy it. Like it really is just kind of, it is what it is. And either you're going to like that or you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a movie that, like I said, I think if you go with properly calibrated expectations, you'll know if you want to see it or not. And then if you do want to see it, probably something there for you to find that you like.
Yeah, and it is thin on plot, but the other stuff it has, he handles expertly, I think.
Yeah, so that'll wrap up our spoiler-free discussion. Before we jump into spoilers, if you're following the podcast, you can do us a huge favor and leave a review in iTunes to help other people find the podcast and helps us move up the podcast charts, and we always appreciate any feedback we can get there. We also enjoy on YouTube. We get some great comments on some of the videos, so we always enjoy seeing that. You can always send us an email at podcast@housebythevideostore.com if you want to contact us directly. And if you send us something, we can discuss it on the podcast itself. So you can always send us an email, and we'll take a look at that. You can find all the work we're doing at housebythevideostore.com. You can find links to all of our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all the different links there. So make sure to follow us on Facebook, because we posted some behind-the-scenes picture recently from the short that we shot after the slasher. We get some other stuff in the works. So, as we shoot stuff or work on different projects, we will be posting pictures and things there. And if I get a teaser for the short film, I'll get it on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at some point in the next few weeks. So be on the lookout for that.
And Chad may be shooting something in a month or so, right?
Yeah, we're trying to shoot in the next month. They're just working on casting stuff, but...
Oh, man. Okay. I just realized I may have scheduled a shoot for my business. Actually, maybe it is different date than he wanted to shoot.
Well, yeah, there's one more project in the works. I know, Sean, you've been working on a script for something. And there's some other things. So we're trying to get some stuff in the works. There's at least, at the minimum, we'll have one short done this year. Most likely 2, maybe 3. Who knows? But follow us on social media. You can see updates on all that type of stuff. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Will_droid.
And I'm at Blevin Sean on Twitter.
And like I said, make sure to follow us on Instagram at HBTVS_official, because when we were doing some of those shoots for the After the Slasher kind of pickup stuff on a few weeks ago, I used the Instagram stories feature to just take some behind the scenes picture when we were shooting, some behind the scenes pictures. So I'll try to do stuff like that with the Instagram account as we work on new projects. So following us there is a good way to see all the type of stuff like that. And we post pictures of all the stuff we got. There's a poster for After the Slasher that Chad put together that you can check out. And it's actually on IMDb now, so you can go look at it on IMDb. I mean, it just has the cast list and like a basic synopsis, but that is out there. But now we can move into our spoiler-filled discussion of It Comes at Night. Now, I don't think there's like an absolute ton of things to discuss. It's just a movie, if you want to see it, you don't want to know the spoilers at all. You want to go into it knowing as little as possible, because that's how I went into it.
And you should, because as William said, there's not a lot that actually happened. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of plot stuff. So those moments are kind of the moments the film's almost built around, aside from the parts where you're just kind of living there with the characters.
Yeah, so the movie itself, so the key things that happen. So in the beginning of the movie, you see a character that's kind of infected. It's like a little bit older man, and it is the grandfather or the father of Joel Edgerton's character, Paul, his wife. It's her father, Sarah. It's her father and the grandfather of his son, Travis, and he's infected, so they have to take him out and, humanely kill him or, shoot him in the head or whatever. So he's put out his misery, and then they have to burn the body.
Yeah, like that opening sequence I thought was great because it was just like, it was pretty brutal, shot him in the head and then burned the body. And you knew it was a family member or whatever by that time. So I think that was a very actually strong way to open the film. And it wasn't just people talking like, we've been here for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was very, very, like it was a cool scene. Like,
so
it
gave you an introduction into the world, and it showed you how Paul and his family are dealing with the fallout of this disease or this infection. So you kind of got that information. And then after that later that night, there's a character that breaks into their house named Will, who, they knock out, or Paul knocks out and then ties him to the tree to question him, just to make sure that, one, he's not infected with anything, and then to figure out why he was there. And, Will claims that he was just, scavenging, looking for food or whatever, because his wife and son need water and things like that. And then
and he lived at his brother's, but his brother is now dead. Like, Paul, like his character, I think is great because he's so specifically careful, But like he's a little ruthless also, which I love, because he's like the right amount of ruthless you would need to survive.
Well, too, like a big thing that I think is a missed opportunity in the movie is that when Paul was kind of interrogating Will, he says like as you mentioned, he said that he was at his brother's and then his brother died. And then his wife, Paul's wife, Sarah, when he comes back in the house, asks him, like, did you ask him about the smoke? Because since they shot the grandfather and burned his body, there was smoke that could have been what drew the character of Will to them, but Will didn't mention that. So, as the movie goes along, so when they bring Will back and there's a point where Paul and Will are having a discussion and he says that he was an only child, and then Paul says, well, what about your brother? He's like, oh, well, it was my wife's brother-in-law. So there's just a few things about, their story. And then when Will and Paul are going back to the location where Will said his family was at, they're ambushed by two men with guns that they manage to get the upper hand on and kill. And Will is beating one of the guys with his fist. And then Paul shoots him after, Will says, like, wait. And then it does look as if the character of Will, it looks like he knows those guys or is aware of who they are. But then he tells Paul, he's like, well, no, I didn't know them. I just thought maybe we should, interrogate him to see if there's a larger group out there, if there's other people, or what exactly is going on. So
I feel like you're in the same boat as Paul, where you're like, I don't know how much to trust this guy. You know what I mean?
But he's obviously like attacking the guy, not going along with it and turning on him.
It's a very like kind of almost unsettling, the whole time you're like, okay, he seems suspicious here. Like, is this his brother? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because later on they bring up the brother, like you said, and he's like, oh, it was my brother-in-law. But like, there's so many great little things. I think that they keep you in the dark, just like the characters. and then they never get resolved. But it's kind of stuff that may not get resolved based on the way the events in the film play out.
Yeah, I think that, like, at least to me, it would have been a little bit more narratively satisfying if more tension was born out of, like, Paul and Sarah and Travis not trusting Will and his wife Kim, because their stories just didn't match up eventually. Like, I think there was more drama to be, taken out of that, but then at the same time, it didn't seem like that was necessarily what they were, what the director and the writer were, interested in exploring with the movie. The writer was the director, it was Trey Edward Schultz.
Yeah, and I think, I totally agree that there was an opportunity there, and it may have been a situation of where if they would have all been really friendly as they were at a certain point, that the end of the film would have made the tension even higher because they kind of were getting along very well. And then Paul, basically they have to make it's not a hard decision for him, but it is kind of more of a ruthless decision. Like, okay, everybody split up. And then they're like, all right, you know what I mean? Like, I think it probably would have diminished maybe the impact of the end of the film if they would have done that.
Yeah.
But I agree. There was an opportunity there. It's just kind of probably a decision to make, like, okay, what do we want to like lean into?
Yeah. Cause the other big thing that happened was the dog Stanley got away from their location, went out in the woods. And, Travis was upset about it and all that. And then
and Paul falls down running, which is so phenomenal. I love that moment.
And he has like an injury to his leg that's not quite clear what it is. And, like, you see like a bandage on his leg that he appears to have had that. And he had like a little bit of like a certain way he was walking, like a limp a little bit. So he had some like leg injury that wasn't clear what it was. But, based on the fact they're living out in the wilderness kind of without like modern, medicine, who knows what happened. But then, there's a night where the couple, Will and his wife, they have a small child named Andrew, and Travis sees Andrew at nighttime and then takes him back to the room with his parents. And then he goes and sees that there's like a red door in the house that's like the only way in or out, and it's always supposed to be locked, and the door is unlocked, and he hears like noise. Then he gets everybody, and they find the dog Stanley, who is injured, not dead, but injured and on the verge of dying. And then the thing becomes, well, the dog was infected or wasn't infected. Who had contact with the dog? Did the little 4-year-old boy Andrew open the door and touch the dog? And he says he doesn't remember. And Travis, said that he wasn't sleepwalking. He just saw the kid. And then to the movie, it's called It Comes at Night, and nothing in the movie ever really comes at night aside from the dreams that the character Travis has, which are all kind of prophetic. So, or at least, they indicate things will be future danger and things that actually do end up like being the downfall of the character Travis and the entire family, is Will and, his family. So him having these dreams that are kind of prophetic about that family, infecting him, shows that maybe like the It Comes at Night is the dream aspect, was kind of what I took away from it. There's not really like a deeper meaning to the movie. It's more of just about like, character study, and then
it's like the fear and paranoia, you know what I mean? Like what that does, but also something I appreciate is like Paul's character. He's so specific that he never makes any dumb decisions in the film. Like, he's not like a complete badass or anything, because obviously, him falling down or whatever, but like he makes very smart decisions, and they may be, he may be seem like he's a little heartless to other people at times, but it is because he's trying to do the best for his family, for them to survive. And it's not like he goes out in the middle of the night for some stupid reason. Aside from the beginning of the film, when they're like, "Oh, we need to get duct tape," I was like, why do they keep their duct tape outside if it's dangerous? But other than that, like, he seems very specific about a lot of things, and he doesn't do anything dumb. Like, he's always prepared and kind of ready for anything.
Well, too, and once in the end, they think that, so once Will and his wife want to leave, because Travis overhears them, they, interpret that as their kid is sick, and if they let them leave, they could come back later to the house because they know where it's at, and they know they have supplies and all that stuff. So you have that kind of altercation where Will and his family are leaving, and they, get the jump on Paul, and they have a gun. But then, Will and Sarah get the jump on them, and then
that's like a hard decision to make. Like, that's
and
where
Sarah
Paul's like,
was on board too when she realized.
Yeah, like basically they were going in there to execute them, seemingly. You know what I mean? Like they felt like, okay, we don't have any other decision because if they leave, they can come back and kill us.
Yeah. Yeah, so they knew that if you let them go, that they are dangerous because they know your location. If they get desperate, they can come back later and try to do something. So they know that.
That whole scene, that's the one I said after I watched, like after that one had kind of finished out, or even maybe I was in progress, I was like, oh man, this just went up to like almost a 9.5 in my book because I think that scene was so good. Like I really, really enjoyed the way that whole thing was handled because, yeah, that was brutal like brutal stakes at hand. And you were like, this is not going to end well no matter what.
Yeah, and then
it doesn't.
Yeah, because so you have like the part where Will like manages to get the upper hand and attack Paul briefly before Sarah shoots and kills him, and then when he, so Will is shot and he's either dying or dead, and then when his wife Kim like is escaping with their son, Paul like chases down and shoots and he kills Andrew, their like 4-year-old. So she's just, distraught over it and just says, you killed my, kid or whatever. Just kill me. And then he does. And
I think that's much more horrifying and brutal than, putting a little monster in this film coming after people.
Yeah.
That a lot of people were expecting. I get it, expectations. But for me, you want to see like a horror film, like the end of this film is very, just way more disturbing than your average horror film or like 95% of the horror films that come out,
Yeah, because like, the big climactic moment is they kill like, this relatively, moral or at least like logical and decent enough people like Paul and Sarah and Travis, or at least with Paul and Sarah, they kill, this other couple that hadn't appeared to do anything wrong so far. Their stories didn't quite make a ton of sense.
And they seemingly just said, hey, we want to leave. We just want some fair rations.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They wanted their share of the food and they wanted to leave. Now, like you said, the fact that they knew that meant that if they got desperate, they would be back and probably antagonistic. So, but then too, at the end of the day, they were all infected. So,
but like that kind of puts you in the mindset of like, Paul seems like a real son of a bitch, but maybe he's been around, maybe he's been in this world around long enough where he knows.
Well, he said
where things going to end up,
He said he was a teacher too. So he wasn't like a former soldier, most likely.
Yeah. But I'm saying like he understands the reality of what the world is now.
That's why they have those like rigorous rules and.
Yeah. Like he's, it seems like such a ruthless thing and it is very ruthless, but it's like, I think that's how the film does a good job of actually putting you in that kind of situation that they're in. And it's not just a film that is just based on plot alone and then kind of gets away easy. And it's like, okay, well, the family escapes and then, something happens or maybe the kid lives and they take the kid and raise the kid. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of horror films may end up being like that instead. So I applauded the brutality of it because it mattered for the story and the world in this film.
Yeah. So the big questions you're left with at the end of the movie was, what was out in the woods that the dog Stanley encountered that injured and got him infected? What was the actual real backstory of, Will and his family with Kim and their son Andrew? And then what happened at night when Travis found the little boy Andrew and the door was unlocked and the dog was in the house? Like, so those are the big questions you're left with. It doesn't really give you any closure on it. But you do know, at least I would think the very easy assumption at the end of the movie is that Travis is sick and like his mom was telling him just to let go. So you assume that he has died. And then you see that, Paul and his wife Sarah are sitting at the table. They're both infected too. So they know that they're not long for the world. So that's kind of how you end the movie. There's just a few points leading up to that. You're not sure exactly what happened. And there's really nothing in the text of the movie that lets you know what it was. Like who unlocked the door? Could the kid have actually unlocked it? Like it's all unclear. But something happened.
Yeah, I don't know if he's the son sleptwalked, not the little one, but Paul's son. Travis. Because of all his dreams and stuff. I almost feel like it's a situation with him. But who knows? Yeah, that also honestly led to. I feel like they could have milked that a little bit more with more suspense, like looking throughout the house for somebody. Yeah, because I thought that's where that was going. But I did like that a lot was not completely explained, and I'm kind of jumping back now, but that's a way the Mummy film was totally mishandled. Like, I didn't even touch on that, but when that film opens, there's so much over narration and like over explaining every little thing, and they're showing you to you also, like, and I'm just like, man, they really had to make this kind of for quote unquote dumb audiences, or you know what I mean, like people that can't be challenged at all. They're really spelling things out, and this film is the opposite of that. But like the problems in the Mummy was so much further. I had forgot about those little like disappointments fresh out of the gate. But
Yeah.
but yeah, this film, yeah, it's not like a full meal. You know what I mean? This isn't, if you're looking for a film that you think is just going to fire on all cylinders for you, it's not like a full meal. It's like maybe if you were looking for a really good dessert, it is that thing, if that's exactly what kind of dessert you wanted. You know what I mean? Like, this is not, I would not want every film to be like this or to be this bare bones, but there's room in the world for films like this. And this is one that I think it does enough exciting, but it also kind of doesn't spell things out. Like, I don't know, there was just the right concoction in this, that it was just original enough, and it's still a little bit familiar, and it kind of handled some things we've seen before, but it handled them so well, and the execution was so good that, yeah, that's why I kind of just enjoyed it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that'll wrap up our discussion of It Comes at Night. So that is all the discussion on that movie and The Mummy and Young Frankenstein. So I think that's enough to wrap up this episode. So that'll bring this episode of the House by Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video